Today it's part 4 of how I learned to play guitar, and this is something you need to be doing regardless of genre. Hello and welcome to another video with me, Elmo Karjalainen. It's good to have you along. You can call me this guy if my name is tricky to pronounce. Today I'm talking about how I learned to play guitar. This is video number 4 in the series. There's a playlist with the previous videos linked in the description, so check that out if you haven't already. Before I get going, special thanks to my patrons over on Patreon who support this channel. Great stuff. I'm really thankful for all the support I get. If you want to check out my Patreon, there's a link in the description to that. You get access to all of my music, my guitar academy with lessons, exclusive stuff. You can even take that stuff for free if you want to. So, part 4 of how I learned to play guitar, and this is something you need to be doing sooner rather than later. There is a too soon, but yeah. This is playing with other people and playing live. So I'd kind of started transcribing stuff. I'd learned all the scales, I'd done all the exercises, I had technique. I'd gotten over my first major crisis, which was I almost quit playing due to bad experience with a teacher. But at some point I started playing with other people. This was roughly around when I was 13-ish. We had a band in school, 3 of us, and it was hugely beneficial in so many ways. Now, going back to what I said earlier, there is a too soon, so if you struggle to even play basic chords, if it's something like this, then maybe it's a bit too soon. The thing is, when you play with other people, there are so many things happening. When we practice at home, we often just do stuff, whatever. There could be exercises like... It's not very musical. We might play songs, we might just be doing this. Something like that, but playing even that stuff with a band will give you so much. You will start developing a sense of time, which is separate from a sense of time that you might develop with a metronome, because you have a drummer who probably won't be like a metronome. Very few drummers are, and even if they are exactly like metronomes, they're probably not great. You start to develop your own sense of time. You start to develop a sense of interacting with other pieces of music, which is much more difficult at home. Sure, there's a second best thing there that you can do because let's face it, not everyone has the option of playing with other people. You might live in a small village where there's just you, your grandma, and a lonely dog, or something like that. So, playing with your grandma and that lonely dog might not be fun. So you might be stuck, and yeah, I can't play with other people. That is a problem, but you can get around it by playing with tracks over actual proper music or backing tracks that will at least get you part way towards playing with other people, or the experience of playing with other people. The thing is, when you play with other people, you get the social aspect of it all as well. And let's not forget, music very often is social. When you create music, be it that you play a song like Smells Like Teen Spirit, or you write music with other people, the creative spark that you get from those other people, the energy that you get from those other people is something that I was about to say is impossible to get at home, but at least it's extremely difficult to replicate. It's just plain fun. So it'll be good for your motivation. You'll get that interactional thing where the drummer might play one thing and you'll feed off that thing. The bass player might skip a measure or two, and you're going like scrambling. And because he's the bass player, or she, you have to basically follow along. And that's all good practice. It's brilliant stuff. Also, even if you're a very accomplished guitar player, technically, you know your theory, all that, you end up playing with a punk bass player, you can learn a lot from that very different person that you're playing with. I have an example of this where I had a student a few years ago who, she was a very good guitar player considering how little she'd played. She started out taking lessons from me, and within a year she was very good for having just played a year. Her problem was that she thought everything had to be perfect, and she was really nervous of playing in front of me. Now, playing with other people in a band setting will help you if you're a bit nervous, because it's easier in that band setting than in front of another person who's just listening to you. And also, I kind of thought that she would need to actually play something completely rubbish, but pass it off as being the best thing in the world. And I'm not saying punk is complete rubbish, but people who play punk have that great attitude of, even if it's really rough around the edges and it's really not the highest form of art, they just go like this, and it's brilliant. She could have learned so much from playing with a punk bass player or drummer or punk singer or whatever. The same goes the other way. If you're a punk guitar player, if you play with a jazz guy, you might realize it's not all rubbish. I mean, knowing some theory can really help you. You could get that from a teacher, I guess, but there's a different dynamic to just playing with a band. And all of that stuff, you rehearse and you can't hear everything properly. That will help you develop your ears, because most often when you start gigging, there will be situations where you won't hear everything properly. So if you've developed your ears in that rehearsal room, in those situations already, you'll be better off for it. Now, getting back to the being nervous thing, if you play live for the first time with just backing tracks, I haven't done this, so I'm not sure, but I would assume that it's nerve-wracking. The thing about playing live in front of an audience together with a band is that, at least for me, I've always felt that the rest of the people in the band absorb some of that pressure from me. So it makes it mentally less stressful for me. I remember playing the first time with just a backing track, and that was horrible. And I'd played live loads of times. I started playing with other people, and it was great fun, and it functioned as a kind of motivator as well. I didn't really have trouble with staying motivated, but playing with others certainly helped. It gave me certain deadlines to learn certain stuff, deadlines which I'm sure I wouldn't have kept if I'd just been doing my own thing. I would just have been doing my own thing, but because we were a band of very different people, we did stuff that was outside of what I would normally have done. So I learned other kinds of stuff as well. That's again one of the benefits of playing with other people. And I've mentioned the creative aspect of it, just playing other people's songs. But what if you write music together? Something like Rammstein, the German band, it's said that, or at least I've heard that their musical backgrounds are wildly different. But that's part of what makes that band, the sum is greater than the parts, or the whole, however that saying goes, I forget. I'm tired, I need to sleep. Anyway, the band becomes bigger than the sum of its parts. That's more like it, yeah. And your varied backgrounds will create, well, sometimes it might create just tension and kind of resentment, but in other cases it will bring you something that you would never have gotten to otherwise. I've had this as well, and it's a brilliant feeling. And you kind of feed off each other's creativity, and you go like, what if I did this or something, and the next guy goes, what if we did something, and you go, wow, that's brilliant. Really poor example, that. Anyway, you get the idea. That then feeds your creativity, and the more you feed your creativity, the more creative you get. It's kind of like building a muscle. So the more you exercise your creativity, my phone's making noises, the more creative you get, the stronger that creative kind of inclination gets, and it helps when you do creative stuff with others. You have to think outside the box, your own little box, and other people help that. Then we get to the whole playing live thing. Fairly quickly after I started playing with my school friends, we had a show which was a nerve-wracking experience. But it's every show that I did in the beginning is kind of like I've suffered from some form of stage fright. The first gig I played in school, that was our second gig actually, I stood with my back towards the audience, like Miles Davis. Miles Davis had in no way influenced me, but that's what I did because I was too scared to look at the audience. And gradually it got better and better and better, and that was very much down to the people I had around me, but also the whole just step out there and do it. Because I've worked with people who have real issues with stage fright, because I'm a music teacher, I teach 13 to 16-year-old kids. I've always kind of said that every time you step on stage, you take one step closer towards not being frightened anymore. I don't know if it ever goes away totally, but it's such a slow process. It's like having a big stack of papers, and every time you play live, you take one paper off the stack, so you won't notice the difference maybe. But slowly you will notice the difference, and you might actually take a couple of steps back because something bad might happen, or you might react to that bad thing happening in a very positive way. Now, I had this happen. I've talked about embarrassing moments that I've had live, and yeah, that was one of the embarrassing moments I had was when I had a string break, and it was my big solo during a show, and that could potentially have really messed with me. But the great thing was I realized that people listening to what we're doing are not in the situation in the same way that we are. So if I'm in that situation, I'm living the music in a different way from them. I'm going to be noticing everything, and the audience won't. Not even, and I've realized this later on, not even professional musicians will experience the thing that they're listening to from the audience in the same way that the band on stage will. And that's a huge comfort, at least to me, because that's a mistake, they won't notice. The musicians might notice something different, something that I'm not noticing at all. But still, even that, having an embarrassing moment, reacting to it in a positive way will help. And you will never get to have that chance unless you play live. You have to step in front of an audience at some point, unless your plan is to just make music at home, which is fine. But most of us want to perform in some way to other people. Now, playing live also teaches you a lot about just playing your instrument, because it's a whole different ball game to playing at home. I'm sure you've seen tons of YouTube guitar players or Instagram guitar players who are brilliant. When they sit at home, maybe they've done take number 355, but when you get out on stage, it's take one. If you mess that up, there ain't no take two. So you get a kind of, especially if you play a lot live, you get into a routine. You know what works, you know what you can't do. and so on. And even if something breaks or everything goes horribly wrong, you keep that smile on your face. If it's that kind of music, if it's gloomy kind of music, you keep your frown on. Sorry, not a major chord, a minor chord. Or if it's angry music, you smash stuff up and it's all part of the show. But that's stuff really that you can only take to a certain point by watching others. You have to actually experience that by playing live. Plus, it's huge fun at the end of the day. The traveling, I'm not too keen on that, but the actual standing on stage, playing in front of others, is great fun. And you won't know how much fun it is until you've tried it. It's kind of, for me, it became kind of addictive at one point. So I realized this is brilliant. I need to do more of this. And well, now I've done so much of it that it's still fun, but it's not the same anymore. So yeah, after all of that practicing, the woodshedding as it at least was called when I was young, sitting around doing exercises hour upon hour of whatever. That only takes you so far, because that whole playing with other people takes you a couple of steps further, and playing live takes you a couple of more steps further. That you will never, or at least it will be so hard to take those steps without playing live and with other people, that it would just be foolish not to do those things unless you have a valid reason, like I don't know anyone, there's no one in my village, I live out in the forest, or I'm really not a people person, I don't want to talk to other people, in which case it's fine. I mean, you can make music just for yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. But that was, for me, one of the big developments of my kind of guitar playing journey was playing live and playing with other people. So many good times, and I warmly recommend that you try it. Absolutely. So that's basically it. This was very much a kind of unscripted thing. I had a bit of a think before I did this, but hey, that's the way it goes. I hope you enjoyed it. Click like if you did. There's a playlist with my music if you want to check that out. There's a playlist with my lessons. Sorry, there's the playlist with all of the other How I Learned to Play Guitar videos somewhere here. Check those out. Comment, let me know what you thought. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that bell notification thing. And like I said, join me on Patreon because it's great stuff. And if you don't like it, you can just bugger off and not pay. So, I hope to see you in another one. Take care. Goodbye!